Cy Young Award winner Shane Bieber is back. Lucas Giolito with the Padres, he is on the IL.
I'm looking to the bullpen to bring my lefty in. Keep the lead and make your team look pedestrian. It's in your wheelhouse, we'll swing for the fence. You know it's money around here, and I ain't talking expense. Strike one, heat a low in the way, you can't hit it. Know you wanna start a rally, but you better forget it. Strike two, off speed, same spot, your car looking. Get ready at the plate, this time you're not cooking. Strike three, swinging out of the zone. You ain't even touch it first. Tell me how they gonna drive you home. Walk it back, looking like we ain't cool then. The game's over, might as well put them back to the bullpen, oh yeah.
That's right, everybody. We bring it back to the bullpen Monday through Friday on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. This is Back to the Bullpen. He's Mike Stanton, 19 years in the majors. I'm Brett Chansey. I bring you the local expert analysis breakdown, and we bring you a show unlike any other. Thank y'all for tuning in. Mike, we've got several things to talk about going around the league. A monster comeback by the Phillies, something that we definitely have to talk about. Ernie Clement, the leading vote getter in the American League All-Star vote. What is going on? And Bieber is back. And we're not talking about the singer. We're talking about the pitcher. And Lucas Giolito was back, but he's not back anymore. Let's get into it.
Yeah, and we're going to start off with "Don't Call Me Justin," Shane Bieber. And, you know, he actually last night, he didn't throw the ball very well. He hasn't thrown the ball well. We'll get to all that in just a minute. He didn't pitch well yesterday against the Astros, gave up some home runs. But, you know, this is a former American League Cy Young Award winner. I mean, whenever you get one of those guys back into your rotation, you know, that is a big boost to your club, even if he didn't throw the ball well in his rehab starts, and he didn't throw the ball particularly well yesterday. You know, it's still a big boost to get one of your main cogs back into your rotation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've got Jose Berrios out for the year, Cody Ponce, a torn ACL, Max Scherzer on the IL, Bowden Francis out for the season. So to say that they need a pitcher and a veteran presence is probably an understatement. Now, his rehab numbers were rough, 17 innings, 13 earned runs, 4 home runs allowed. Fastball only averaged about 91.8, but this guy's not a flamethrower, Mike. So I'm not necessarily ultra concerned about that, but it is the location. It is about attacking the zone. And, you know, they say all the time, don't pay attention to the numbers on the rehab starts. Apparently, the Blue Jays liked enough of what they saw that they went ahead and brought him up. Maybe a little bit of a desperation move. But if Shane Bieber can find a groove and get in a groove, this is a ball club that touts Ernie Clement, you know, Vlad Guerrero Jr., George Springer. They've got a talented offense. They just need some help on the pitching side.
Yeah, and I mean, can you say they rushed him back? I mean, when you look at the numbers, you can say possibly the 13 earned runs in 17 innings. But the thing is, you can't look at that solely just simply because you don't know what he's working on. He may be working on this. He may be working on something mechanically. And then you just don't, a major league pitcher just does not have the adrenaline rush of pitching in a minor league game that you do in a big league game. Now, again, I said he did not pitch well yesterday against the Astros. I think he only went 3 2/3, gave up 4 runs, gave up some home run. I think 3 home runs. Okay, that's fine. Not that, I mean, is that a big deal? Well, you're trying to win every baseball game with the position they are in the division, they being the Blue Jays. But, you said this is not Shane Bieber has never been a flamethrower. This is a guy that changes speeds. He moves the ball around. It's all about location. And he just hasn't been quite what you would expect Shane Bieber to do. But they needed him. So I do think there's a little bit of urgency here. I don't think they rushed him back, but I think there was definitely urgency. So they brought him back. We'll have to see what his next couple starts look like. But like I said, it's still a big boost to the team's psyche to get one of your top of the rotation type arms back off the IL and back, in active duty.
Yeah, definitely. And you just hope that the version of Bieber you get for the rest of the year is at least closer to the Cy Young Bieber. Now, I don't think the Blue Jays expect him to be Cy Young Bieber, and I don't know that they have to have him at the highest level, but you do have to go out there and shove and at least be able to handle 5 or 6 innings. The Blue Jays bullpen does have some pieces in there that are really good and really effective.
Yeah.
But as we've seen in Houston or any other club that's struggling, when your starters aren't going for long outings, it makes it very difficult for your bullpen to have sustained success.
Yeah, their bullpen has actually been better. It didn't get off to a great start in the season, but as a whole, they have thrown the ball much better as of late. But, even when you're throwing the ball well, you don't want these guys to suffer from overexposure. And that can happen to any bullpen. That can happen to every bullpen. So, I think that was one of the reasons they want to get Bieber back, is because, Bieber is a guy that can be efficient with his pitch count. He can give you innings at least, and quality innings when he's right. They're just hoping that they can get him right and get him on the right track. Does he need to be a Cy Young Award winner? He does not, but he needs to be good, and he needs to be able to give them quality innings and to take pressure off that bullpen and take pressure off the lineup. The lineup, this has not been a great year for the Toronto Blue Jays lineup. They have not driven the ball out of the ballpark, and that's all goes to Vladdy Jr. He's hit the ball fine, but the power just has not been there.
Right.
And that's been a big issue for the Blue Jays. Now, do they have time to climb back in the race? Well, it depends on what race you're talking about. I don't know about the division, but wild card, absolutely.
Oh yeah, they're in the wild card.
Yeah.
As we speak, they're now one game under 500 going into the third game. It's the rubber game because they won game 1 versus the Astros. The Astros won game 2, and the Houston Astros are sending Mike Burrows back to the starting position after taking him off, giving him a rest in the rotation, and going against Trey Savage. So we know all about Trey Savage and how good he can be. But moving over to Lucas Giolito, there's been a troubling trend with him. Now, if you go back to 2025, he was 10-4. 2023, he was 8-15. He signed really late in the year, missed all of spring training. A lot of clubs weren't really knocking at his door, didn't seem to be very sought after. You and I were talking about that in the offseason. He was one of the bigger names that wasn't signed, and we were kind of shocked.
So he came, he 2025 was actually a pretty good season. Had a 3.41 ERA, hit through 145 innings. But late in the season, he went on the IL with an elbow injury, and he didn't pitch in the postseason. And I think with his injury history prior to that, Tommy John and all the other times he's been on the IL and the DL, I think he just scared him for what he was asking for, and he sat. He sat all offseason. He sat all spring training. He didn't sign with the Padres until about a month into the regular season. He agreed to go to the minor leagues for a short stint to try and build up, which he had been throwing. Mid-May, he comes up, and his ERA since coming up from the minor leagues is a little over 5. So he hasn't thrown the ball well since he's been up there. His strikeout rate is down, his walk rate is up, but there's another issue here. His fastball velocity this year in 2026 has averaged 90.8 miles an hour. That is remarkably low from what it was last year in 2025. 2025, it averaged 93.3 miles an hour. So you're talking about 2.5 miles an hour. That is a big, big drop. And you got to remember, when this guy for years was one of the top pitching prospects. This was one of those big velocity power type arms, and he just really hasn't found his mojo that he had prior to the arm injury going on the IL at the end of the regular season in 2025. And so, with all that, he goes on the 15-day IL, and it's with right elbow inflammation. We don't have any more information. We don't know. We don't, they have, I'm sure there's going to be imaging and tests and all this kind of stuff. We don't have any of that information yet, but with the numbers that we're looking at, the walk rate up, the strikeout rate down, the velocity way down, it just doesn't look good. Hopefully a little bit of rest will, he'll kind of be able to right the ship and get back into it. But I will say this, missing spring training, missing the regular season, just like, rushing Shane Bieber back that we were just talking about, your routine is completely off. I mean, you are, and a lot of guys, most guys are slaves to their routine. But not having spring training, not having the buildup, not having, even being able to hang out with the guys and learn your teammates. I mean, these are all things that give you a comfort factor. And he just hasn't had that. So, hopefully, giving him a couple weeks off, he can kind of calm down a little bit and just, get things back to where exactly they need to be for him to go out and be, the Lucas Giolito we saw, just 12 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely tough to see two all-star pitchers that are struggling. One is trying to prove that he can remain in the rotation. The other one is just trying to prove that he can remain healthy. In our next segment, we're going to talk about Ernie Clement, his all-star season, and what other players are having flashes of a comeback season and what it all means. Next. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a new team. It doesn't matter where you're at, because one great addition can have a ripple effect on everyone around you. When you find someone who brings the right skills, attitude, and experience, it makes the entire group better. That's why finding a qualified candidate matters so much, and why tools like Indeed Sponsored Jobs can help you in this process. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all the boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results when you need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. No matter what team you're a fan of, get your daily coverage completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer.
Welcome back to the Bullpen, presented by the Locked On Network. So now we're going to talk a little all-star voting, and the new update is out, and a little bit of shock at the top of the American League. Blue Jays second baseman Ernie Clement is actually leading all of the American League in voting with over 2 million votes. Probably not something we would have predicted.
Yeah, definitely. You would think that Yordan Alvarez would be leading, or Aaron Judge. And I mean, Aaron Judge is injured, and Aaron Judge is actually still in there with 1.78 million, even though he's on the IL. But yeah, Ernie Clement outpacing every single person. Yordan Alvarez, 1.974 million votes. Look, Ernie Clement, people say he's been overlooked, or maybe, he just hasn't been on the popularity train. Look, he's on the Blue Jays, who challenged the Dodgers, who took them to 7 games. And so being on the biggest stage in Major League Baseball, that definitely will help your name recognition there quite a bit, because you've got Mike Trout, who's injured again, 1.7 million votes. You've got Bobby Witt Jr., Junior Camarino, Shea Langoliers. And we'll talk about one other person I'm not mentioning right now, because I think he's having a comeback season. But good for Ernie Clement. second
Yeah.
baseman of the Blue Jays, getting that recognition. And Toronto's voting, Canada's voting, and probably America's voting with that many votes in.
Yeah, and listen, the number of votes you can make online, in person, I mean that you can do it. And listen, we're still a long way away from the final vote. So, this is just a discussion we're having. Now, if this was the final vote, then maybe we have a discussion, but we know that, and it's one of the questions we have just about every single solitary year. And Clement's having a solid year. He's hitting 292. He's leading the American League with 20 doubles. So he's doing very well, but you just don't expect a second baseman to be leading the votes when you have guys like, Aaron Judge and Mike Trout and the year that Yordan is having and Bobby Witt Jr. You have these big names
Yeah.
that he's ahead of. But again, we are not at the final vote yet, so we can't really get upset. But we also know that all-star voting is all about, it's a popularity contest, or it's also about a team promoting the voting for a certain player. And we see it every single year, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's how it works. But that's why the all-star team isn't just the starters. It's about the whole team. Yeah, the starters are picked by the people, and most of the time they get it right. And I'll actually even go out and say that they'll probably still get it right this year. It's just a little bit of bumpy road right now. And so I don't want to take anything away from Ernie Clement. He's having a solid season. He's been a very good player. And it's just a little shocking that he's got such big name superstars behind him, not in front of him.
Well, back in 2017, I remember the Astros sent 6 All-Stars to the All-Star game, and their campaign was All Stros, right? Instead of All Stars. And look, as a fan, I vote. I do my 5 votes every day, but I will say this. I don't always vote for the same 5 every single time. Yeah. I look who's doing what. I look who's people can earn my vote, can lose my vote. And some people may think that's lame, but if you're on the IL, I don't vote for you. I mean, that's just all there is to it. I only vote for the guys that are active. And so my votes get dispersed among probably 30 different players through the whole All-Star balloting. But I remember, Mike, when I was young, going to the Astrodome, going to the All-Star ballot box,
right,
pulling a stack of 100 All-Star ballots and getting these little coffee straws and putting the straws through the holes
all the way through. Yeah.
And putting, Johnny
real
Bibbs,
paper ballots. There was no
Dale Murphy. I mean, I remember I'm getting chills thinking about this.
Back then there was no internet voting. There was no internet. Yeah, you had to do it.
Vote.
Yeah.
You could vote 300 or 400 times
but you had to do it in person.
You had to do it in person. You had to drop
it had
the
to be a
ballot
paper
in the
ballot.
Yeah.
You
could even write in physically, like
right.
Yeah, those were the days. But someone on this list, of course, you've got different guys, Pete Crow Armstrong, Juan Soto, different guys, but Byron Buxton is having a comeback year. Byron Buxton is on fire. He's so hot that the Minnesota Twins have even said, you know what? We are not trading Byron Buxton. If you think that you're getting Byron Buxton, you can forget that. And you know what? Good for them, because Buxton,
that's a conversation for another time, but that is a conversation we may need to have, because how long have they waited on Byron Buxton to become a dude? I mean, we've seen him in short stints, but I mean, the injury history is just so immense.
It is. When he's healthy, though, Mike, he's one of the most dynamic outfielders out there. And he's got the power this year, and he's got the glove. He's an exciting player.
But I guess the question would be, what could the Twins get in return for that? And that's where, baseball, president of baseball operations and GMs, that's where they have to make the really, really difficult calls on, what, they have to, you can say you're not trading them all you want, but you have to at least field the calls. And it is, it's part of the job. You also have to entertain it, even if you have no, because who's to say somebody isn't going to absolutely sell the farm? that's going to give
Right.
you, 4 or 5 their top prospects. I mean, if you don't pull the trigger on something like that, it's almost a detriment to your organization.
Yeah, it is. It is. But yeah, that's definitely an exciting conversation we can have for at least a few more weeks until we get to the All-Star break. But in our last segment, we're going to talk about a monster comeback by the Phillies.
Yeah.
And when you talk about being down to your last strike, well, the Phillies, they had no quit in them last night. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a new team. It doesn't matter where you're at, because one great addition can have a ripple effect on everyone around you. When you find someone who brings the right skills, attitude, and experience, it makes the entire group better. That's why finding a qualified candidate matters so much, and why tools like Indeed Sponsored Jobs can help you in this process. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all the boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results when you need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. No matter what team you're a fan of, get your daily coverage completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer.
Welcome back to the Bullpen, presented by the Locked On Network. Over the weekend, actually yesterday, we were talking about the Philadelphia Phillies and what they did over the weekend. Actually, in particular, Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. Bryce Harper hitting for the cycle. Kyle Schwarber hitting like 9 miles of home runs over the weekend. And they kind of, well, I don't want to say picked up right where they left off, because they waited till late in the game. But boy, did they put up a crooked number at the end of this ball game.
Yeah, they literally put up okay. The Phillies were trailing 8-6 in the ninth. Bases were empty, 2 outs, down to their final strike. Mike, people are heading to their cars.
Oh,
people are trying.
You know
to
what?
Get to
probably several of them are already gone.
Right. And look, what followed this? Trey Turner single, and this is the Phillies. Brandon Marsh game tying 2-run home run. Okay, 8-8. Okay, we get a tie. We go to extra innings. We can still win this thing. Bryson Stott go ahead 3-run homer. Edmundo Sosa 2-run double. 8 consecutive Phillies hits. 8 runs scored in the inning. Look,
but it goes deeper than that, Brett, because yes, they were trailing 8-6 in the ninth inning. Nobody on, 2 outs. And they were down to their last strike. This is why you have to play 27 outs.
Yeah.
This is, you have to go all the way. And it started off with a guy that has not had a good offensive year in Trey Turner with a lousy single. He just gets, okay, no big deal. We still got 2 outs. We're 1 out away. Then Marsh goes deep. Stott goes deep after a few guys get on. Even Edmundo Sosa, he, channels his Kyle Schwarber, because Schwarber was scratched for the game. He actually replaced, a late addition to the lineup. A big 2-run double. I mean, this was impressive. And the question is, and of course there's not an answer for this. Would they have been able to do this if they didn't just have the big weekend and all the good feelings about the cycle and the home run, Kyle Schwarber hitting 4 home runs in 2 days, 3 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, winning a few ball games. And now all of a sudden the Phillies could be getting on a roll. This is the kind of thing that when you pull a win out of the clutches of defeat, This can have a big impact. Is it just one win? Yeah. I mean, does it mean a whole lot in the standings? Not a whole lot, but it can mean a lot in the confidence the team is going to play with going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So Bryson Stott went 3 for 4 in this game. He's hitting 241 on the season. The question is, can a game like this be something that kind of catapults him into the rest of the first half, into the second half? Because right now, Brandon Marsh, I've actually met Brandon Marsh and talked to him a couple different times, Mike, and this guy is a class act. He's got that recognizable long hair that looks like he's always just gotten out of the shower or been in a rainstorm.
Yeah.
He's hitting 315 on the year. He's one of the leading vote getters in the National League. He was 3 for 6 in this game. And the energy that this club has, and this is why to me it is so surprising that the Phillies haven't won a World Series lately. Because with guys like Bryce Harper, with guys like Kyle Schwarber, with Brandon Marsh, with the pitching they have this year, to me, the Phillies are a huge threat to the Dodgers in the postseason. If they can take the energy and the performance and they can do that in the playoffs, there's not a whole lot of teams that can beat them when it matters. And look, again, it's a long season. We're at the true halfway point of the season, but you just like seeing this because look, there was a late addition of Edmundo Sosa in the game because Kyle Schwarber was scratched before the game and he went 2 for 5. He hits a 2-run homer. He had 5 RBIs. So it's kind of a next man up mentality. But I want to mention this to you. I was looking it up. The biggest comeback ever in the bottom of the ninth was in 1901, April 25th. Down 13-4 in the bottom of the ninth, the Detroit Tigers came back to beat the Milwaukee Brewers 14-13.
Wow.
14-13. 19.
Talk about a bullpen nightmare. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And the Phillies just did this. They did it against the Nationals. The Nationals has been one of the better offensive teams in Major League Baseball. They've been playing very good. There's, a team. I mean, when was the last time we said at a halfway point the Nationals were over 500?
Exactly.
So this was an interleague, an interdivision rival that is right behind them in the standings. So this actually did have some meaning in the standings. And this can have the opposite effect on the Nationals, just simply because, this was they had a win at hand. They were about to beat the Phillies, a team that's, geographically right in their area. They were a team, they were about to gain a game on the Phillies, and then the Phillies just bust out the whooping stick with 2 outs and nobody on in the ninth.
Well, they've scored the most runs of anybody in Major League Baseball.
They have been hitting the ball very well this year.
So, Mike, here's the deal. They're 42. They have 429 runs scored, 419 runs scored against. Can you imagine if they had the runs scored against that maybe the Braves had at 281? They might very well be leading the East.
Oh, easily. I don't think that's a stretch at all.
And the Nationals, since they last won a World Series in 2021, which I don't like to talk about or remember because it's not a fun year for me as a Houston fan. But this is a team that going into the season, now I'm not saying they were projected to be bad, but they weren't the guys that people were talking about the Mets. They were talking about the Phillies and they were talking about the Braves.
Yeah.
They kind of, it's Miami, it's Washington. And you're right. I mean, they're over 500 and I think the National League is going to be a fun postseason to watch because I think it's kind of anybody's game. And we know who the favorites are. We know, the Braves, the Dodgers are your front runners. The Brewers, will they stop disappointing their fans in Milwaukee? But, man, what a game. I mean, we definitely had to talk about this one because this is what makes baseball exciting. And kids, that's why you don't leave baseball games early.
That is exactly what I was going to say. How many people were kicking themselves as they're pulling out of the parking lot? They can't get out of line. The lines are backed up or they just got on the freeway. What? They just tied it up, and just a few minutes later, they end up dropping a big 8 spot on the Nationals bullpen. So yeah, you gotta stick around. The game's never over until the 27th out is recorded, or the last out is recorded. If you go to extra innings.
That's right. It's like Yogi Berra said, I didn't hear the fat lady sing. you know, but I mean, look, there is, I would encourage people get out and vote. You could go 5 times a day. And if you're really drunk about it, if you're an El Tiempo margarita away from doing something crazy with the voting, use all 3 of your email accounts and vote 15 times a day.
It's in the rules. That is in the rule. That's in the rules. And that's, is that's what's happening in Toronto? Sure. That's what's happening across the nation. That's why, it's fun to have the people elect the starters. And with your the rules that you put on yourself, you're not going to elect someone that you're not going to vote for someone that's on the IL. Well, you know what? If the player's on the IL, he can't start anyway. Somebody's going to have to start So
Right.
I don't have a problem with Aaron Judge should be on the All-Star team. Aaron Judge is one of the
100%.
best players on the planet. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Just because he's on the IL, he wouldn't play anyways. If he, even if he had just come back, he would still say, I need the rest or something like that because he gets it. Same with Mike Trout. Mike Trout's on the IL. Okay, that's fine, but he's had a good season, and baseball is better when Mike Trout is an all-star.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's true. The overall leading vote getter, I'll end with this, is of course none other than Shohei Ohtani with 2.31 million votes. So, but yeah, I mean, there's some Braves, some Dodgers, some Nationals, a Philly on there. It'll be exciting to see. Another thing, as we close out, Yordan Alvarez, we had mentioned last night, will not be in the home run derby, but he's going to be at the All-Star game. So it's going to be fun to see some of these sluggers against some of the game's best pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exhibition. It's great that it no longer means anything because it never should have meant anything.
That was a terrible idea.
Major League Baseball finally got that right. It took some seasons, but they finally got that out of there. And it's exactly what it's supposed to be. Now there's a red carpet, there's a home run derby, there's all this stuff, and that's what it should be. It should be highlighting the biggest, the best players in the world.
Yeah, you know what? And what we'll do, I'm gonna tease something next show, and Mike doesn't know I'm gonna say this, but next show, I'm gonna have Mike share some of his experience when he made an all-star team in his career, because to hear from a player's perspective is really unique. And because I think as fans, we imagine what it's like, but you can kind of give us a little inside look on that if you don't mind. Hey, y'all, thank y'all for tuning in to Back to the Bullpen. Mike and I love talking baseball. We love the fact that you're here listening or you're watching, and make sure that you get your free week trial, your free 7-day trial. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer to join the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and become a member of the members only Discord and so much more. But, for all of us here Back to the Bullpen, thank y'all for tuning in. We want to make your baseball day the best by hanging out with us. For myself and Mike, y'all have a good one. Play ball.
Adios.